Where else would you rather be than a room full of Penn Staters? I'm Paul Clifford. I'm the CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association. Welcome to the 2024 Alumni Leadership Connections Conference. On behalf of everyone at the Alumni Association, including our Alumni Council, we're thrilled that you all are here. We're also grateful for this group for everything that you do for Penn State and the Alumni Association. You all extend the Penn State experience to alumni all over the world, and you show that this experience is portable, right? It lives on our campuses, it lives all across the Commonwealth, it lives in our hearts, and it lives in our minds. And you all are able to extend that experience and bring Penn State out wherever you live, work, and play. And for that, we're truly grateful. This weekend is all about you and continuing to give you, our volunteer leaders, the resources and information you need to lead affiliate groups across the country. Conferences like this don't just happen. There are a lot of people behind the scenes that make all of this come together, and I'm going to recognize a number of our volunteers who were integral in helping to pull this together. So, Parul Luthra, where are you, Parul? Former Alumni Council member. Oh, there she is. Where's Angela White, the president of the Hawaii chapter? There you go. And how about Shane White, president of the Philadelphia chapter? Thank you, Parul, Angela, and Shane, for all the time that you put in to making this conference possible. We hope you enjoy this weekend and benefit from the many hands-on sessions and workshops which will be led by Penn State experts. This conference is for Penn Staters by Penn Staters. And speaking of Penn State experts, it's now my pleasure to introduce Jim Stengel. One of the foremost marketing experts in the world, Jim is a champion of volunteer engagement and the transformational gift that he and his wife Kathleen provided in 2014 to the Alumni Association helps to make this annual conference possible. Jim boasts 25 years of experience in marketing at Procter & Gamble, including 7 as Global Marketing Officer. Highly respected as a thought leader in the marketing industry and widely known for leading innovation and for a commitment to building leading-edge marketing capabilities, Jim is currently the president and CEO of the Jim Stengel Company, a think tank and consultancy. The company conducts proprietary research, generates thought leadership, and applies a new framework to drive business growth in today's global economy. He's also the host of the highly engaging and award-winning CMO podcast. So I hope that you will go to your podcast app of choice and subscribe. And once you do, go ahead and give him a review and a like. And that'll just be another way you can help out a fellow Penn Stater. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jim Stengel.
That. Whoa! That's a wake up. So listen, it's so good to be back. I came into campus last night. I haven't been back in 2 years, which is terrible, and I can't make that mistake again. But I want to start this off with a feeling of, gratitude or specialness. How many of you have come back to campus for this weekend? Raise your hand. So most of you. So could I just ask you to start this conference off, oh, sorry about that, with one thing that's happened to you since coming back to campus, whether it's this morning or last night, that evoked a memory or an emotion or an interesting experience or something that was special and that you're happy that it happened. So anyone want to volunteer? Yes, sir. And say who you are and where you're from. Let's do that.
I'm Justin Stevens from Southern Connecticut. I guess I would say friends that I didn't know were going to be here, and catching up. So yeah, it's definitely been a highlight so far.
That's the best. Who else? Hello?
Good afternoon. I have to look and see what my name is. Melissa Brickhouse, Alumni Council. I think the thing for me was I sat in a classroom at Penn State, and I haven't sat in a classroom in 25 years, and it was just the memories coming back, and I loved it.
Wow. What was the class?
I don't know. It was it was earlier today when we had one of the sessions, and I was in the being physically in a Penn State class.
Super. Love it. Anyone else? Anyone else? Yes. Oh.
No, it's not bad. Hi, Teresa Colligan. I'm from the Southern New Jersey chapter. I was looking out on the Old Main lawn, and I thought about the naps that we used to take, and it made me get teary-eyed.
No naps the next 90 minutes. Okay. Yeah, isn't that weird? Anyone else? One last one? Yes, up here, up front. Best shirt.
I'm Brian Shaughnessy. I'm from the Triangle Raleigh chapter. The best thing that I have is I was able to get an old map from when I was here in the 1980s from Petit Library, and I've compared it, like right now, I'd be sitting in parking lot 80. So, and the creamery was over on the other side of Shoreledge. So it's funny how buildings have moved around.
That's so good. So I have 15 or 20 minutes with you, and it's a warm-up for Dana, who's going to come up afterward for a really, really super session. So I just want to reflect a little bit on what we're here for and what the weekend will be. And I started with 3 pictures, and Penn State is a very special place in our heart, my wife and myself. I did not go here undergraduate. I went here for my graduate degree, my MBA, in 1983. And my wife followed me by a year. She came from San Diego, Los Angeles, never had been here, just decided it looked good, so I'm going to try it. So I saw her in the mailroom back when there were mailrooms in 1983, immediately fell in love. And sort of, I guess in today's world, it would be stalking. But I pursued her, and we were engaged in January. We met in mid-September. And we eloped to Bellefonte, honestly, married in front of Judge Brown and his assistant, and didn't tell our families, and married later in San Diego. So I met my wife here, and we just had the most magical 9 months together. And I also met Procter & Gamble here. There was someone in the administrative office of Smeal who took an interest in me and thought I'd be a perfect fit for P&G, and I didn't know that. So he urged me to apply, and I applied for an internship and got denied, so did not get in. And he said, don't give up. And I said, well, I'm not going to give up. So I went back, and I did get hired full-time. So we moved to Cincinnati, my wife and I, as newlyweds. But all of that happened here at Penn State. And it was the people that were in the business building at the time, the professors, the counselors, who were responsible for really me going to Procter & Gamble, which was transformational for my life. I was never on an airplane until I was 22. I had a wonderful childhood in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, but we didn't do stuff like that. So going to P&G, a global company, and getting exposed to all the cultures of the world, and a company that believed in people and quality products and diversity in the, before it was fashionable. And I learned a lot, and it was very defining company for me. So it all happened here. It all started here. So, and my wife and I have made Penn State the top philanthropy or cause or institution that we support, because we believe in it, we believe in the people, and we believe in you. So it's a great, great pleasure to be back with you. We would not be connected to the university without the Alumni Association. There is no doubt we would not be connected. We would have wandered away. But it's because of the efforts of the team over the years and the people in this room that we have stayed close to the university and its mission. And it's made our life better. It honestly has. Our kids do not go here, but they love Penn State. So it's deep. It's deep. The picture on the right with Devin, this was, I think, 2 years ago. Do you remember when we were together 2 years ago? Any memories from that? You do remember that? what do you remember from 2 years ago? There's a couple pictures from it. What do you remember? We had brunch at the Arboretum, which was fun, and Devin was there. It was fantastic. Anything else? Yeah.
The country club? I forget where we were. We were at Tussey Mountain, and you just provided incredible information. That's what I remember from 2 years ago. Okay, good. So, bar is low.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. We were together. Yeah. What do you remember about that?
I remember a great conversation that was expertly facilitated. It's hard. I was part of a panel of 4, and it's hard managing 4 different people, 4 different perspectives with common themes. And it was a great convo with all of us. It felt really comfortable, and it was really well done by you. So thank you.
All right. So, well, I remember we did this panel discussion in the State Theater with 3 people. One worked for SNL, so he sort of had an unfair competitive advantage. But it was a fabulous panel, and we're going to do this again tomorrow afternoon. You probably know this from looking at your agenda. And the 3 women who are going to be on the panel, Dana is one of them. She's going to get up here after I'm finished. We have 3 extraordinary human beings, and I can't wait to get them on stage and, again, have a fantastic discussion about leadership. So that was a highlight 2 years ago. It will be a highlight this year. I want to talk about the last 2 years. I haven't been here for 2 years, and the pictures on this screen are a big reason why I haven't been back for 2 years. We had a granddaughter on the left, and she is turning 2 this weekend. And my wife would be here, but she's with her in Detroit, and I will meet her after this for her birthday. My daughter's in the middle. She got married last November to a Naval Academy grad helicopter pilot. He's now deployed in the Red Sea, and she's pregnant. And she's due in October, and that's my wife, Kathleen, and our son and daughter, and my son's wife's Kat. She's also pregnant, so this one's going to have a sister in a few weeks, whose name is Poppy. Her name is Olive. So, why am I sharing at a leadership conference these details about my personal life? I'm going to ask Dana to answer that question. She wasn't prepped for this. So Dana, why would a leader share at a leadership conference some things about their family and the most important things to them?
Well, Jim, the leader of podcast, the Winston Churchill quote just came to me in terms of the further back we look, the further ahead we might see. And, this is all about leadership celebrating the past, but it's also about leading and influencing the future distinctively with all the wonderful souls that we have here in the room. So that's what my answer would be.
I surprised her with that. Absolutely. And also, I think what we'll talk about when Dana gets up here after I'm finished is this concept of an integrated life. And, if you don't lead an integrated life, I think it's very hard to lead a happy, successful life of content and peacefulness and satisfaction. So it's all together. And there's no doubt I'm the person I am because of these people and a lot of others, but it's all part of our leadership journey, which I think Dana's going to talk about a lot in a few minutes. That's a good picture. I don't know what's on my head. For some reason, I was thinking about what I'm going to say to lead into Dana's workshop with you about leadership. And I was sitting at my desk staring out the window, as you guys always do when you're thinking about a speech. And I thought, well, I just made a video for a group in Japan. And I said, I'm just going to share some of the things I prepared for that video. The background on it is, for some reason, there's no Japanese in this audience. I don't think there's anyone who lives in Japan who would come back for this. Hawaii's close. But for some reason, I'm a thing in Japan. I just am a thing in Japan, in the marketing and branding world. I don't know totally why. I have some theories. I used to go over, when I worked at Procter & Gamble, every January for the largest New Year's party in Japan. And New Year's is a really big deal in Japan. And I would go to that party and meet a lot of Japanese people and spend the day at the party. That's probably one reason. My books, I wrote 2 books. They were translated into Japanese and sold well. Procter & Gamble is a very respected company in Japan. That's part of it. So I would go over at least once a year when I was head of marketing for P&G, and I would meet with the media and academics and so on. And I have a lot of friends at P&G who've gone on to other companies in Japan. So I think that's all part of it, but I'm asked a lot to come over and go to workshops, do interviews, and I say yes when I can because I love the country for a lot of reasons. So anyway, a group in Japan wrote to me and said, we'd like you to make a 10 to 15-minute video about leadership. And it's for 250 rising young marketing professionals in Japan. So think about a lot of the young people in this room. And marketing in Japan is not highly valued. I mean, in the United States, you go to work in marketing at Johnson & Johnson or Unilever or Procter & Gamble or Ford or Google. You know, it has some stature. In Japan, they don't even have a word for marketing in the Japanese language. So it is not a highly valued career path, and I've been part of the group that's been trying to change that, and there's a lot of other people who feel that same way. So anyway, these are young Japanese leaders, so I did a video for them about leadership. And the question they asked me was, it's a very Japanese question, what makes for an ideal marketing leader? And I talked about 8 things because 8 is a very lucky number in Japan. It's a very hopeful number. So very briefly, I'm going to run through what I shared in that video. I can probably send the video to you if you're interested. It's kind of funny. But anyway, here's 8 things, and this would apply to anyone in any function. They're just leadership principles. And the first one is curiosity. I have a podcast which is 5.5 years old. I do 1 episode a week. So I've talked to, do the math, over 300 leaders. And when I ask them what the most important characteristic is of a leader, the most often answer to that question is curiosity. In fact, I was at a big festival a few months ago. I interviewed the CEO of Netflix, a guy named Ted Saranton, and the CMO of Unilever. I asked them that question, separate sessions. They both answered curiosity. So why? Right? If you're not curious, how do you learn about anything? How do you learn about people, customers, products, technologies, anything? So it is a very, and I do think it's something you can learn and you can work on. So some people maybe are more innately curious, but it's a big one. So curiosity, and my recommendation is have some strategy to keep yourself curious. I do my podcast to keep me curious. It makes some money for me, it's fun, blah, blah, blah. It keeps me, every week I have to study a new industry, a new person, a new group, and it's fabulous. Keeps me curious, keeps me fresh. Second one, champion of your customers. This is for every leader, whatever your organization is. Maybe it's not an organization that has customers, that has members, whatever it might be. But there are very few people in a C-suite who talk about customers enough. And if you grow up in marketing, this is one that is a little bit specific in marketing, honestly, they're the function that has to do it. Sales is interested in next month. Finance is interested in different things. Product supply is interested in different things. It's a huge responsibility to put the customers at the center of every decision. So that's number 2. Number 3, I don't care what discipline you work in. Engineering, finance, technology, any of them. Be a business person first, a functional leader second. I counsel a lot of chief marketing officers who are doing well, maybe not doing so well. My first question is always, what is your business trying to do? What's its impact it's trying to make? What's its strategy? What are your issues? What's going well? What's not going well? And all of your work in your function should pivot from that. And you should build your credibility as a business leader, not a functional leader. If you have an ambition to keep rising in your company, you've got to incorporate this principle, whatever your function is. Team builder. Dana's going to talk a lot about this. The one thing that makes for a failing senior executive and a failing chief marketing officer is they don't build the right team quickly enough. Right team quickly enough. I've seen a lot of them go down because they did not make that a priority, because it's hard, and it's personal, and it's vulnerable. But believe me, if this isn't number one in your priority whenever you have a change in jobs, watch out. Champion creativity. How are most problems solved in this world? Creative thinking. How are new opportunities revealed? Creative thinking. So champion creativity. The higher you go in an organization, the more important it is that you talk about this, you value it, and you demonstrate it. Setting high standards. I think it's about the most important thing we do as leaders. Not the most important thing, but it's in the top 3. What we say yes to and what we say no to says everything about what you value as a company and as a human being. You say, let's just move on with this. We're at our deadline. It's not our best work, but let's put it out there. What's that say to your organization? So I thought every day in my job at P&G about what I said yes to, what I said no to, and how I explained that. It says everything if you want to work and be part of a leading organization. 7th, have conviction in your company or brand, or do something about it. Dana and I were just talking about the concept of brand purpose. Does your brand have some sort of purpose on the impact it's trying to make for your customers and the world at large? If you don't have conviction in what you're doing, how can your colleagues and your customers have conviction in what you're doing? So if you don't believe in your company or believe in your product or believe in your organization or believe in its purpose, change it. And if you can't change it, change your company. And the last one is confidence. I mean, I've had a long career. It wasn't always full of confidence. I had bad years, I had bad moments, I had bad episodes, and I've lost my confidence. It's the worst thing in the world. And when I coach people now, I ask them about that right up front. How's your confidence? And you can have great confidence when you're working on a tough issue or a company that's in trouble. But it's very difficult to lead if you're not confident in yourself, your team, and your plan. And that's a self-awareness check. I haven't always been great at it, but I've learned a lot. And I work on my confidence when I'm in a situation where if I feel like I don't have it, I unpack that. And I do something about it. And it's usually related to ambiguity on what was important to me. So, those are the 8 things. This is the second question they asked me. It's an interesting one. Who's the most ideal? They asked me one, who's the most ideal marketer I've ever met? And I couldn't say one person. So I had 3, and I had reasons for it. If you're in the advertising and marketing industry, you know this person's name. His name is Dan Wyden from Portland, Oregon. He worked with Nike in the very early days. So he is right there with Phil Knight in the creation of one of the most fabulous brands in the world. The reason I picked him is I didn't work with him till later in my career. There was no one in the industry who championed creativity like this person. I visited him when I decided to leave Procter & Gamble. I wanted to tell some people in person I was doing this. He was one of them. I flew to Portland. He was late for our meeting, which was very unlike him. And he came in looking a little bit frazzled. And he said, I just fired Starbucks. I said, how many people did you have on the account? He said, 50. He said, no one's getting fired. They're going to be redeployed. But Howard Schultz's team, he said, I love Howard. His team would not allow us to be who we are. So he resigned the account. What message did his people take from that? And he made Procter & Gamble way better because of how they champion creativity. What else can I say? In a world where it is almost impossible to get attention, this person, with a few others in this world, gets attention. And the second reason, she champions her fans. Customer champion? She values her audience. There are several performers who do, but she's very, very good at this. So gets attention, champions her fans. And I actually did meet this guy. And there weren't many who set standards as high as Steve Jobs. He did a lot of things. He wasn't perfect. None of us are. But the way he set standards was unlike most. So I'll end with this one. You know what you're about. You should say next. We are. But I also share it because I will end my remarks where I began them. You are what make this organization what it is. We have teams, we have staff here, but the volunteers of the Alumni Association, we are really only as good as the alumni. I would say that about Procter & Gamble, too. And you are what makes our alumni connected, devoted, committed, energized, loyal, and proud. So thank you for all you do every day. We are so happy and proud to be part of it. So I'll turn it back to Paul.
All right, Jim, that was fantastic. I feel like the conference is off to a good start, like I've been shot out of a cannon, so I'm ready to go. Again, let's have another round of applause for Jim Stengel. You know, when Jim said that he's kind of a big deal in Japan, I thought, oh yeah, he's the David Hasselhoff of Japan. So. All right, now we're going to put into practice what we just learned. Our next distinguished guest will lead a hands-on workshop focusing on the conference theme of authentic leadership. It says doctor, but General Doctor. Dana Bourne is a retired brigadier general with 30 years of distinguished service in the United States Air Force. She has been routinely recognized for her leadership and commitment to service. Currently, she holds key positions at the Harvard Kennedy School, serving as the faculty chair for the Senior Executive Fellows Program, faculty advisor for the Black Family Graduate Fellowship, and lecturer in public policy. Penn Staters, please welcome one of our own, Dr. Dana Bourne.
All right, thank you very much, Paul. And thank you, Jim and Kathleen, for making this possible, to be able to come home to Penn State to celebrate those that are out there building the community of Penn State. Please join me in saying thank you again to Jim and also his great partner in supporting We Are, Jim and Kathleen Stengel. And I am so glad to be back on campus. I got to tell you my moment. My moment was waking up in the Hyatt this morning, looking out the window and going, that's the bell tower, before I even got out of my pajamas. And it was just like one of those moments like we're home. I also have a romantic story related to Penn State. It actually happened, I came here for my PhD. I graduated in 1994 in industrial organizational psychology. The Air Force gave me 3 years to get a PhD and then told me I had to finish 3 months early. So I was in the fetal position, crying like a baby when I finished, handed in my dissertation, drove to the Pentagon, and had to start like that day, and I met my husband. Literally in the Pentagon on the first day. My family says, because I was at the time 34, hadn't been married yet, and met my husband on the first day, they said, you finally took your head out of a book, and there was your knight in shining armor. And tomorrow, he's here with me. He's from Pennsylvania as well. Tomorrow is our 28th wedding anniversary, so it's cool to be back. So I am going to do a workshop with you, and it's based on an entire course that I teach at Harvard, but it's also, we do modules, and it's based on authentic leadership. And the reason that I love this workshop is because we've studied leadership for decades. For as many people that study leadership, there's a definition of leadership, and really there's nothing we can do that says, we're going to bring you in this year, we're going to give you an upload, and you're going to go be great leaders, and then you come back next year and we're going to do 2.0, and it's like, nah. What we've found, and it's a beautiful thing, that each and every one of us is so distinctive. Everybody has such a different lens on life. Like, I even got the question wrong, but there was no real wrong answer, right? Because it's like the lens you're bringing in is I want to share with them I have like a balanced, integrated life. And I'm looking there because my life isn't that balanced and integrated yet. I'm retiring 1 September. And I'm thinking, you know, it's about authentic leadership. It's really about who are you? And so, but it's the beauty of it is that we all put on a lens based on the journey we've been on. And we all have a lot of lessons learned about that journey. Some of them are like, if we plot out our lives, there's up times and down times, and we learn more sometimes from the down times, but ultimately the thread, it's the arc in our lives that is the thing that makes us most effective in our leadership. And you don't have to take my word for it. I've been studying this like with hardcore PhD research skills, and we just had a paper come out that summarizes it in the Harvard Business Review in January that says when you do this work to ask the deep question of who are you and why are you, your brand, your purpose, it's your compass. And I loved your compass, Jim, on your slide because it's our, I used to say true north. And then I do programs in Australia and New Zealand. I'm actually teaching for them. And they said, there's no north here. We have the Southern Cross. And I said, okay, we'll just call that follow your compass then. But it's really our compass. And so this workshop, what we're going to do is get a little bit into your compass, and I'm going to ask you to get a little bit out of your comfort zone, and we're going to do some practicing, which is going to bring the authentic muscle to hopefully unleashing your distinctive, effective leadership. So if that's okay with you, that's the plan we're going to go on. I took out a bunch of my slides so that we could have more time. There's a clicker somewhere. All right. I'm going to be standing here, and I'm going to say, next slide, please. That probably doesn't bode well for a Penn State graduate, right? All right, so who are you? That's the question we're going to deal with. Now, if at the end of 90 minutes, so we're supposed to finish about 4:30, at the end of that time frame, what I hope is we hit the target with 3 things. It may look like 6, but it's actually 3. One is you have in some way created a little bit more authentic human connection with others. So that capacity that you're building is a connection and a community as people affiliated with We Are Penn State. It's also going to be some competency, which is self-awareness and acceptance. I put the and acceptance because you could know you're an introvert, right, from taking a personality test and go, yeah, but I can't be a leader because I'm so introverted. Wrong, right? It's knowing that you're introverted. There's a lot of people that are really effective leaders that are introverts. Read the book Quiet, and if you want some of that background. But how do I know that that's me, but I embrace and accept that and lead from that and with that as part of who I am, not changing. And then the second part is having a learning or a growth mindset. That's the curiosity that, and that is a number one. And I'll probably say this on the panel, but the number one way to leadership is actually leaning into that curiosity. And that's hard. Believe me, I got to Harvard after 30 years in the military. My last 9 years, I was the academic dean at the Air Force Academy, and I went to my first faculty meeting, and a planning meeting was 2.5 hours long, and I said, man, put me in charge. We could do this in 15 minutes and be out of here. And that was judgment. What I should have done is go, I'm curious about why this is such a long meeting. What is it that I'm missing? What is it I could be contributing that I'm not because I'm so furious that this is going on and on and on? So curiosity, when we hear somebody say something that we get emotional about, how do we lean into, I wonder why I'm reacting the way I am? What's triggered inside of me? Where is it that they may be coming from in terms of the way they just reacted to that situation? Curiosity is really something we have to practice because that's hard, but leaning into that. So I call that the growth mindset. We're going to talk about that. And then I and me to we. How many of you have been on an airplane that you hear, if something happens, put your own oxygen mask on first? Why is that? You're laughing, but why is that? What if you... Exactly. So what happens if you don't? Let's just say you're very noble, and every one of you here, this is an important point because you're stepping up to serve the Penn State community, which is something bigger than it's others oriented. But the put your own oxygen mask on first is for that purpose, because what happens if you do the right thing and you take care of the most vulnerable next to you? Maybe it's me as an older lady. Maybe it's a young child. Maybe it's somebody who you think needs assistance, whether they do or not. Then what happens? You have done a noble thing. But what happens? You die. Then what good are you? Right? So this I and the me, there is a me and team. So we don't want to take the I and the me out of what we bring into. We don't stop there. It's to deliver the we. But don't forget I and me. And we just don't stop there. That would be egocentric. But we do want to leverage for our collective work we're trying to influence and be. So we are Penn State, but it starts, you're an important part of that. And then the last part is, how many of you feel burnt out? Yeah, you go to bed sometimes, especially after, and I don't want to say post-pandemic, but in this period, people are exhausted. It's like full on going back to work is actually going back to work 24/7, you're all like the military. And so another part of this focus is on this last part, which is kind of a recommitment or a catalyzation, or to give you a little bit more spring in your step, a little fire in your belly, a little bit more get up and go, a little more juice in your tank, if you know what that means, to go to bed good tired. And the reason for that, and I started to tell you about the research, the 5 findings that we found by doing this hard work of the internal journey and the reflective work, and what I'm going to ask you to do together throughout a couple of different exercises, is number 1, it reduces stress. Number 2, it increases your well-being. We've done this in a controlled experiment with executives and students, and private sector, cross-sector, comes out significant every time. It also increases your growth learning mindset, curiosity. It also gives you a better, or I won't say better, but it gives you more self-concept clarity about who am I, and also a clarity about your purpose. So all those things, by doing this work, actually have good benefit for you, but it is hard work, I will say. So I'm going to warm you up, and I'm going to not ask you to do anything I'm not willing to do. So I'm going to be giving you examples of answers to some questions before I put you into some conversations with each other. So you can be thinking about, while I'm sharing mine, thinking about what it is you're going to be sharing. But this is attributed to Margaret Thatcher, and we all have kind of thoughts in our heads, and they come to us from thinking about our life story, records that we hear, the playing of what people told us, and doubts that we might have about ourselves, or maybe even sometimes some affirmation, like to talk ourselves into doing something. But we all have this thought process, the inner discussion. And this is a waterfall that I share with you, because it says, watch our thoughts. They become our words, then our words become our actions become our habits. Our habits are really what we do when we're under stress or in an emergency. Our habits become our character, and then our character becomes our destiny. So the bottom line, according to Margaret Thatcher, and I think it goes back before her, is watch our thoughts, because they then become what our destiny is. And the interesting thing is we can edit our thoughts and actually change that whole trajectory. We have the ability to do that, and it's also proven to be very helpful. And I'll give you several examples of that. Now, you shared some pictures, so I'll share a few pictures too. My husband and I are in a mixed marriage, because he's Navy, Marine Corps retired, and I am Air Force retired almost. Well, Air Force retired almost. Harvard retired as well. And you can tell I'm excited about retirement, can't you? It's like it's coming. And I love to climb mountains. But when I came to Penn State, that left picture, I wore for 30 years, actually 34. I went to the Air Force Academy in 1979 when they first started having women, and I flew airplanes before I drove a car. I started flying when I was about 12, but I had never been on a commercial airplane either until the day I graduated from high school in upstate New York and flew to start basic training at the Air Force Academy the next morning. Ill-advised, no senior summer. That's not a good thing. Going right into basic training. The part on the right side is I literally, after I retired from the military, I took 1 week off and then started at Harvard, and I've been there for 11 years. Also ill-advised, 1 week off between 30 years in the military and starting. So I've promised myself now at least a couple of month pause before I decide what my next failed retirement is going to be. But in the middle are some pictures of my family. And our two daughters, you may have heard our story, and it may come back to you, but our two daughters were 4 months old and just under 3 in the Pentagon daycare on 9/11. Everybody remembers that horrific terrorist day in many different locations, and we're all connected in the loss and fears and everything else. Our two daughters ended up going through a lot of trauma because of that. Fortunately, they survived. Several people came to help move 100+ kids out of the daycare, get them to safety a mile away. And unfortunately, some of the children's parents were perished, and some children weren't picked up after everything was all. It was horrible. Our daughters went through anxiety. We went through a lot of therapy, and they worked through it. And they finally realized at one point of their trauma that there were people that came and knocked on the door that just said, "How can we help?" And they were helped, and they don't know their names. And they said, "That's who we want to be." They want to be like you guys. And so they both ended up going to the Air Force Academy, the Naval Academy, and now they're both serving. One's a helicopter pilot, instructor helicopter pilot down in Alabama, and the other one's over in Japan and serving with the Marine Expeditionary Forces out in the front line as a strategist. So I share that because that's in the Pentagon Memorial for 9/11 with them both in uniform at the bottom. And it was a very exciting May last year for us when our pilot got her pilot wings and the other one got Marine Corps, which was her first choice. So we're a family business of national security, and it was a lot easier for me serving, and I think my husband would say the same thing, than being a parent with children serving. So we have a lot of respect for others of you that have a connection to the military and to young people stepping up. So, and I also remember now what I must have done to my parents when I said I'm going to the Air Force Academy. So this is a framework I would like you to think about when we go into our first exercise, which is coming up next. And it's a simple framework. So just think about things that are challenging, and think about support, which is the other axis on what support is needed to sort of modulate the challenge in order for us to perform. And so sometimes things are very challenging with not enough support. And that's something like public speaking. Our youngest daughter, who's now a strategic communicator for the Marine Corps, won an award when she was younger to go do a speech on her grandfather, who was a Navy World War II pilot. And it was in this, what I would say a beautiful non-threat environment. It's like in Lexington, Massachusetts, in town hall, and most of the people there were VFW or veterans, and they would have just loved it. And the night before, she said, "I can't do it. I'll be traumatized for life if I have to speak. My knees get wobbly, I can't swallow, I get shaky, I faint." And I wasn't there, but my husband, when I got home from Harvard, he said, "Oh, she's not going to do it." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said she'd be traumatized for life. And I said, "Oh, no, this is paralysis. It's the fight or flight or freeze going on. We have to figure out how to lower the challenge and amp up the support, because that's a natural reaction that we have to fear. And if she didn't do it, she'd be traumatized for life, because she'll just believe in a fixed mindset way that I just can't speak, and therefore she won't." And yeah, so my husband actually It was a great moment because he said, well, tell you what, I'll stand behind her. Then if she faints, I'll catch her. If she can't speak, I'll step in and give the speech for her. And anyway, she got up, she did it. It was beautiful. And so we just had to modulate her there to get her in that top quadrant. On the bottom, it's pretty nice, right? It's all high support and low challenge. And that means, you know, everybody goes onto the soccer field, everybody comes off, it doesn't matter what you did, everybody gets a trophy. We don't really like that. We like to know we got earned achievement as humans, that we did something that achieved something. Every once in a while, it's nice to have a kumbaya moment, but we do like to be pushed. If you've ever been in a job, I hope you haven't, but most of us do, where we feel stuck, we feel like we're not growing, that is that space. We want to be up where we're getting support and growing. It's challenging for us, but not too high. So what I would like you to do is try to find yourself into that top right, tough love, sweet spot. The grown zone is the growth zone area. You get to figure out what that is. Now here's an important part, because within you, it's very individualistic. Every single one of us is so different. One of you could probably come up here right now and sing a cappella beautifully and love every moment of it, and your heart, is there anybody here that wants to do that? I, on the other hand, if you make me sing, even just to Jim, who's become a new, good, close, very approachable person, I'd be petrified. I'd be up in that top corner, but here, I mean, being able to engage with you all and invest in your leadership and your effectiveness and your lives, that's not as much. But somebody else might be just the opposite. Let me sing, because I don't stutter when I sing, but if I have to talk, I'm up in that top corner. So it differs across people and it differs within. So finding that spot for you, you have to figure out, but also recognizing that for other people is important as well. All right, are you ready for our first exercise? This one's gonna be kind of fun, but I'm gonna ask you to think about others as they're thinking about you. What do I mean by that? The first question I'd like you to think about sharing with somebody else is, if we were to ask somebody like who you work with day in and day out, or if we asked your family members, what gives you the greatest influence? What do you think they would tell us or tell you? What gives you the greatest influence? It is a behavior, maybe it's an attitude, maybe it's just your essence of the way you are. And for me, I've actually asked this. Arthur Brooks is a colleague. My office at Harvard, I just moved out of it, but David Gergen was on one side of me. Arthur Brooks, who writes for about happiness for the Atlantic, is right across from me. And Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, is right above me. It's an amazing place. But I asked him, if I was right, and he said yes. But I said, what my answer to this question is that I volunteer. And he said, yeah, that's you, because he had a program he had to do in Mexico. The person that he had teaching in the program dropped out, and he came to me and said, Dana, will you do it? And I said, of course, Arthur, I'll do that, as long as I don't have to speak Spanish. He said, yep, you're on. Will you have an interpreter? So volunteers. I'm not sure I'm proud of that, because when I started in the military as a second lieutenant, I had greatest strength on my first evaluation, and it was volunteers. And my supervisor at the time said, Dana, this is wonderful as a second lieutenant, but you don't want to ever see that again. You want to see leadership, right? And so I'm not sure I'm proud of the fact that my colleagues would probably say that my influence is about volunteering. So you don't have to like what it is, but what do you think they'll say is going to be the answer that you share. The second part of what I'd like you to share, and usually it's with one other person, so you just kind of the person next to you, 3 at most, because it's not a very long exercise, is think into the future. So think 3 to 5 years. That's long-term planning, right? Long-term planning is next week in this VUCA world that we're in, but think 3 to 5 years. What do you think, thinking about where you'll be, what part of life you'll be in? I mean, for you, you guys will be graduated now, out working somewhere. What do you think people will say in 3 to 5 years gives you the greatest influence? And I vectored this one too with colleagues, and they said that's probably right. I think they'll say about me that I'm a both-and bridger kind of person. Because I find myself getting more, maybe it's because we're getting so divisive. I want to find the bridge to bring more unity. That's so core. So every time I hear military versus civilian, or liberal versus Democrat, or traditional tenure faculty and practitioners versus, I want to put and in there. Or somebody comes to me and says, I'm at a fork in the road. Do I do this or do I do that? And I go, and what's the third option? Or where's the and? And so I find that that's more the way that I'm thinking. And I think that's going to be maybe what people will say 3 to 5 years is a little bit of more of what my influence is. So I'm going to leave these instructions up here. I'm going to give you about maybe 7 minutes. 6 to 7 minutes. Usually it's 3 minutes each. But I looked for the groups of 3. Please don't do more than 3 because you don't have enough time to get into it. And share your responses with that other person to these 2 questions. The current, what gives you greatest influence? What will others say? And looking 3 to 5 years out, what do you think people in 3 to 5 years will say gives you the greatest influence? So current and future. All right, enjoy your conversations, and I'll let you know when we're about halfway point to make sure you switch. All right, this is a very big, open, fabulous room, but I got to tell you, when I said go ahead and start your conversation, it went boom with you guys. So you're not shy in retiring, so I like that. We're going to do another exercise, but I'm going to set you up for that. You'll be talking with the same folks, and this is all aligned together because when you think about influence, that actually is what leadership is about. And when you think about the process of influencing, we influence based on sort of our values, who we are, and that all comes out in the way that you just answered those 2 questions. And so we're going to build on that, and I want people that were at the tables together to be thinking about not only what you chose to share, but also what you heard, because that can be very helpful as you're trying to kind of help each other elevate the effectiveness of your authentic leadership to help people understand what sometimes people don't see enough of themselves, but you see it in them. And so it's a really dynamic kind of thing. Self-awareness, by the way, self-awareness isn't just by meditating and being aware, right? Because if you think about influence and how you influence others, think about 2 questions. How do people experience themselves in your presence? Wow. How do people experience themselves in your presence? How do people experience you? 2 different questions, but that's self-awareness. People don't define us. Our values define us, but that's important information to know how people are influenced by us and how they are personally influenced by us or how they kind of see us in terms of our influence. So that's what we're going to build upon. Now, I'm going to kind of share with you what we have left to do. We're going to talk about that word authentic. How many of you have heard the word authentic and think it's used way too much? It's used a lot and you've heard it. Because if you look at the data, the word authentic is skyrocketing. If you look at some of the research I'll show you, it's like we are enamored with this word authentic. So here I am doing a session and I teach a whole course and a program on authentic leadership. We're going to talk about why is that? What's going on in our world that's making it that way? We're then going to do an exercise on the power of your life story. Now, I have the word power capitalized, and I used to run from the word power when I was in the military because I felt like power was a misuse of power. I probably was thinking about it as here I am at general order, and maybe it's just authority power. And I also I didn't want to be affiliated with that. Matter of fact, I got to Harvard. We have a program called Women in Power, and they asked me to teach a program in it. And I was like, just because I'm a female general, it's like, no, I want to be just seen as I teach leadership and character development. That's what I study. And I was wrong. I just had to deal with my own, what does power mean to me? But here I have it capitalized. And the reason I have it capitalized is because when we talk about our life stories, all of it, there is a power pack in that. I like to think about it as that backpack that we wear that can kind of feel heavy, or that we forget that we're carrying it, but it's there, is actually our jet pack. Anybody watched the Jetsons, George Jetson? At my retirement from the military, my favorite gift was a little tin lunchbox with George Jetson on it. I just love him. Everything in the Jetsons wasn't invented when I watched it on the first black and white TV, but everything, the treadmill, now the jetpack, right? The instant coffee, you can read news anytime you want. It's amazing. So your backpack is really your authentic leadership jetpack, and we want to think about how we think about our life story in that way. Jonathan Barth, 93 years old, just passed away. He has a quote, "Your life story is not your life. It's your life story." And we have a chance to edit that in the way we think about it. And so that's a growth mindset. So that's our second exercise. And the last one is this role of humanity in a time when we have generative AI, machine learning, robotics. You know, maybe that's got something to do with it. What does it mean to be an authentic leader as we're watching the technology evolution, the innovation evolution, the interconnected revolution that we see, evolution, maybe it is a revolution, of what we see happening right now. So that's going to be our last exercise. So here is the data for those of you that can't see in the back maybe as well. In 2019, a study came out that looked at the fields that many of you have studied, like psychology, sociology, marketing, and management, over the last 3 decades, so 30 years. And how many studies had the word authentic or authenticity in it? Well, it's fascinating. I circled the ones that stand out to me because in management and in psychology, my background, and here we are in the SMIL, in business, doubled in the last 2 decades, the number of studies. In 1990 to 1999, there were only 19 total studies done with that word in it in all these fields. If you look into when it closes out in 2017, there were 208. And most of the doubling was in management and in psychology. And the work in management, the work in psychology was really empirical because that's what we tend to study. The work in management is more theoretical. Work in marketing is probably a little bit more empirical because how many of you want to buy something authentic, like especially those Michael Jordan shoes? I'll get to that in a moment. So that is something happening here. I'm going to kind of say it's also not new. So if you look at some of the ancients, right? To thine own self be true, know thyself. That's been here for a while. But lately, there's been a lot more in the media. During the pandemic, it exploded, because probably behind your Zoom room, it's like, bring your full self to work. It's like, I am. It's totally integrated. It's like my leaf blower, my kids, my dog, my cat. It was fun times. We have great stories. I have to tell, no, I shouldn't tell. Yeah, I'll tell. I have one faculty member who I teach with, and during the pandemic, we also pivoted, and he did not know how to turn his video camera off, and I wasn't sure how to be a really good host on Zoom, and so he got up to go close the door behind him. He was very nicely dressed in a suit and a tie and a nice white shirt. And when he walked to the door, I could see his boxer shorts. And I'm like looking for the hide video kind of thing. And so, but that opened up for us a whole different discussion about what makes being ourselves, being true to who you are, being authentic, really became more a part of our conversation, especially during that period. I share with you some more bar graphs here, but I just want to show that's psychology and the top 3 journals for publishing psychological work. And that's the Journal of Applied Psychology, Personnel Psych, and the Academy Management Review. The gold part that you see on the top is just since 2010, research with the word authentic or authenticity in it. So now I'm going to ask this question from you as we talk about why is this? What are some of your hypotheses about why this is so, and I don't know if we have another mic or, yay! So thank you. Caitlin's going to run around and she will catch you, but give it a go. Why do you think we are using the word authentic or authenticity more? What's happened in the world? What are some ideas? There's no wrong answers here. It's just what first comes to your heart and mind about what's going on here. Yay, you're going to make us run all the way over to the back, but that's all right. Yay, give her a round of applause for doing the first question, or the first answer, I should say.
I think social media plays a part in that because everybody's posting everything online, so everybody's trying to find what is the true thing that's happening because most people post the good, right? They're not posting the not so good or some opportunity, so I think that's one of the reasons I would say.
Outstanding. And social media, I mean, that we could explode that even to, what we're putting out there, we're trying to do, what other people are putting out there and saying, and then how do we know what's true? How many of you had a Wikipedia page? Am I the only one? Okay, you got one too. Did you build your Wikipedia page? No, Wikipedia's built by other people. And mine isn't even my birthday. It's got me younger, so I'm not going to go change it. But so what's out there? And what can we believe? And what's true? And yeah, it's insane. We've got one right here. Social media. That is a good one to start with.
Hi, it's two parts. I think one is, I think there is a need or desire for more transparency as it relates to who people are, what's their agenda. And I think the second thing which is related is when you think about leadership, or people talk about leadership styles, there is a leadership style called authentic leadership, like transformational leadership. So those things will help, I think, that's why we're seeing such an increase, because some of those factors.
Very, very good. So did you hear the nuance of it's what we want? We want to know who you are more and who we can believe, right? Because going back to social media, you can put all kinds of things out there. Think about the dating sites. I mean, so many people met, how many of you here met somebody special through, that's married your husband, all that. It's becoming more common, but there's so much in there about what's out there, and when you actually meet the person, are they the person that you saw? And yeah. One of my best friends of Penn State, after the pandemic, I said, how did the pandemic go for you? And she was single again, and she said 50 dates through social media. We had a lovely dinner conversation because I think I've had maybe 10 dates max in my whole life. So it was vicariously learning about that. But congratulations. Yeah, so social media, what we want, and what else? Right here.
I think of it in terms of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that people are becoming more self-actualized because we have our basic needs met, and everyone is just kind of finding the ceiling with that and exploring more, so it becomes more important to be authentic and transparent.
Ooh, so more authentic and transparent. We're going to come back to that word, but I love how you're saying, we have in essence, we're trying to do something that's more meaningful, that is the self-actualized, and that is being more of who we are and wanting to give others that same opportunity. Excellent. Anything else we're missing? We've got one right here. I'll just give you mine.
Sure, thank you. I think, I believe this politics is really, really causing us to look at what is authentic, and is, especially with the media recording things and what somebody says, and then they say something again differently, and then they say something again, and then media pulls different quotes and things. I think, I'm 65, so I've been around I can remember the Kennedy, when I was a little kid. And as every year goes along, even local politics, I think it's actually kind of scary for our kids, I think. And there's some kids, definitely kids here, but I think politics is really turning the table on so much for all of us.
And underlying what I hear you saying there too, and first of all, we're kind of, people are watching, right? Because of other generations, you know, how are we dealing with it is a real big part of how they can make sense of it. But I hear the underlying thing of who can you, what can you trust? Because, I mean, you see a Carnegie Mellon video that was made of President Obama giving a speech that it looks, sounds, but it wasn't him. And so there's so many things that you're seeing out there, and how many of you get pulled aside on something that you see on YouTube and you go, oh my goodness, and then you find out, oh, I've just been had, that's fake news, or that's been, you know, fabricated. And so we're doing the same thing as consumers of what we see here on television and things like that. So trust right now is going down precipitously. If you look at the annual trust barometers from Edelman, it's going down. Even the military, unfortunately, the only thing that went up this last year, I think, was business. And that was because of how business has been taking on a lot of social, like with ESG, a lot of social, environmental issues, and also healthcare because of who we had to rely on in and during the pandemic, and people that were stepping up and putting themselves into harm's way. But trust overall is going down. That's a big part of probably that. So let's just say we retire the word authentic because it's being used too much. What word would you put instead of authentic? What word first comes to mind as a synonym for authentic if you don't use that word? Real? Genuine? True? Transparent? I'm coming back to you. It echoes. Absolute?
Oh, I said natural.
Natural. Excellent. Do you know if you look up the word in the dictionary what the word is? Original. And I like that because it's not like, it's like unless you've been cloned, you're the original. And then the mold is broken. Anybody here an identical twin? Now, I have had a room this size and had 5 sets of identical twins. I'm like, what is going on? But I asked the question, like, are you any different than your identical twin? And all the time, it's like, oh, of course, you know, I'm a risk taker, my twin isn't, or I like vanilla ice cream, my twin, you know, likes chocolate. I had one person that said, no, my twin and I are exactly the same. I said, what's your twin's name? He said, well, I'm John and he's James. And I was like, well, then you're different. But, you know, we dug a little bit more. They went to different schools, and yeah, they were different. They married different people. I mean, so original has value. I'll give you an example. I love to mountain climb. I don't think I've ever made it to the top of Nittany Mountain, though. Isn't that hard? I just need to go do that. That needs to be on my bucket list. Maybe I can do that. I've been to Everest, to the base camp. I've been to 53 of the 55 14,000-foot peaks in Colorado. I love to mountain climb. And I was in Vail, Colorado when Sir Edmund Hillary, the first New Zealander to ascend to the top of Everest back before it became Grand Central Station. Without oxygen, he did that. He was there. There were 20 of us. It was a fundraiser. And he signed a poster for me that says, Dana, keep climbing, Ed Hillary. I like to elaborate and say, Dear Dana, love Ed Hillary, but I gave you the truth version. Both of my daughters have climbed with me now, and they both want that poster. And I said, you know what? The technology is so good. They both live in different places. I'll make a copy. You can each have one. It'll look gorgeous. And it's like, no, Mom. I'm the oldest. I get the original. No, Mom. The oldest gets everything. I want the original. That's my one thing I want. And the fight goes on. But it's because it has value, originality. And think about that in terms of your originality. Now, I joked a little bit earlier about Michael Jordan shoes, since you brought up Nike. How many of you are aware that people buy Michael Jordan shoes and save them because it's like an investment? They're limited edition. Okay, I see a lot of heads nodding. Well, my oldest daughter started doing that, and she's like having them sent to the house, and we have this temperature-controlled room where we're keeping them. And I thought we were like in some like odd little category that I found out is not the case. But she was going to Georgetown, living with us for a while, and she got a pair of shoes, and she'd always look so happy. And in them, there's a little thing that says authentic on them. And of course, I wanted to take that because I wanted to pass it out to all of you and just, say authentic, authentic. And she said, you can't have it, Mom, because that's how they hold their value, right? They have to stay with the shoes. And then she got one set that came to the door one day, and her face just dropped when she opened the box. And of course, I went right to the authentic little crest thing, and I said, oh, they've got the authentic crest there. And she said, yeah, Mom, but these aren't authentic. And she felt like she had been had, like she paid, right? They're still expensive, even though they're going to become probably more valuable. And she said, look at the stitching. She knew it was not authentic. And so it's interesting. We can get dubbed, right, and thinking things. But we are pretty good at scratching and sniffing at humans to say, are they being real? Are they being transparent? Are they being honest? Are they being all the words you came up with? Are they being original? And what do we think? So we will skip these last questions because I want to go on to the next. But the question is, then how do you do that more? How do you become more original? When does it happen? And I would just say we're walking through a lot of that now, but the when does it happen, I think you have to think about any moment of any day if we're intentional about that, and it might be worthwhile. So the words that I did in a word cloud about the same exercise, I'm showing to you here, and many of the words you came up with are on here. Setting up for our 80s night tomorrow night, I think it is. The word cool's on here, so that tells you about how long I've had this slide. But the word transparent's on there. And while it is absolutely true, I want to say it's not being authentic and being original is not being unfiltered and just putting it all out there. And we have had some serious debates among people like Adam Grant, who wrote the book Think Again and with Sharon Sandberg, people like Iberia, who's at INSEAD, people like Jeff Pfeffer, who's a leading theorist in leadership, have said authenticity is bad advice. Don't tell people to be authentic, thinking transparent. Don't tell people to be transparent. Let's just say I go up to one of my PhD students. I'm a married man. He wrote this in writing. Go up to my PhD student, even though I'm married, and I think they're very attractive, and I say, I think you're very attractive. I want to go to bed with you. That's really bad advice. It's like, uh-huh. That is very bad advice. So authentic is not being totally transparent. Authenticity is very much caring with high emotional intelligence, self-monitoring, being self-aware, being empathetic in thinking and caring about other people's feelings and other people's perspectives. And so it is not pure transparency, but it's being seen and seeing others, wanting to see others a little bit more, but it's not totally unfiltered. And so I just want to address that because it did create quite a debate. Once we agreed, because Iberia wrote an article for the Harvard Business Review that said, the paradox of authenticity, fake it till you make it. And I just got cringy because I thought, fake sounds plastic. That sounds like me trying to be Margaret Thatcher or Sheryl Sandberg or, General fill in the blank, Patton. Can you see me as General Patton? I would fail miserably. So it is actually about stretch till you get there. The article was great, but once we decided that we weren't talking about total being transparent and we weren't talking about being fake, we were talking about stretch till you get there. Everybody has the imposter syndrome. We all became very good friends and actually started collaborating a lot more. Oh, so I would like to read this out. I'm going to go back one. Oops, it's going forward. So I'm going to go back. Oh, you saw I'm going back. I'm going through it. Oh, wow. Well, I'm just going to tell you what's up there. Here's my back arrow. I found it. You know where we're going now. Don't read my punchline of my joke. This quote is from Brené Brown. How many of you heard of Brené Brown? Oh, my gosh. Yeah, she's on Oprah. She's got a thing on courage and vulnerability and everything. Do you mind reading this out for me, because you're right here and you can see it really clearly. Rising senior in Penn State. Give him a round of applause. He's going to read this for you.
Authenticity is not something we have or don't have. It's a practice, a conscious choice of how we want to live. Authenticity is a collection of choices that we have to make every day. It's about the choice to show up and be real. The choice is to be honest. The choice is to let our true selves be seen.
Wonderfully done, wonderfully done, wonderfully done. So is there anything that stands out at you about this? Honest, true, anything else? How you show up? Choice, choice. Choice is in here 5 times. I don't know if you felt yourself saying choice a lot, but choice, choice, choice. So it is our choice that we have every single day. And it's not easy. So it does take having a choice in order to create that as more of a habit, more of our character. So it's Paul the growth mindset. Now, did you remember when I said something about not liking to sing? Or not feeling as though I could sing, it puts me in paralysis? Did anybody get curious about that? There is a story behind that. My sister, she's 1 year older, was Miss New York State in the Miss America pageant. She was the first runner-up. She has a beautiful voice. She's a dancer. And I remember I'm a year younger. I remember going to our church choir, singing in that with her a year after she joined, because I had to be a year older. And the choir director came up to me after our first practice, and she said, you know, we are so thrilled to have you in our choir, but it is okay, honey, if you just lip it. Yeah, you know what my mind did? It went to that fixed mindset of I can't sing. And it's unfair when we get those kind of fixed statements. We use them a lot, and I'll give you an example. But what I learned, because I started writing poetry, and my sister put it into music, and then we started to perform together, and she said, Dana, you have a beautiful voice. You just need to have, you're very auditory, you need to have somebody singing on tune in your ear, and you have a beautiful voice. And so it's just a change of strategy and a lot of practice. We practiced and we practiced and we practiced together. And so I like to think about this as being like a Roomba, you know, the iRobot, the circular thing that cleans your house for you. We nicknamed ours Tukey. So we hire Tukey to clean our house. But Tukey knows its job its purpose is to clean the floor. And when Tukey gets up against a wall, Tukey just circles around and goes around and finds another way. That's the growth mindset. It doesn't quit. It doesn't give up. It doesn't go, oh, I'm not a good house cleaner. It's really fascinating to think about how we stretch. If you've seen or read, the Outliers, 10,000 Hours, it's a lot of practice, it's a lot of tenacity. It's not like anybody was extra brilliant at anything. It was just like that sense of a growth mindset. My daughter, who's the youngest one that I told doesn't like to public speak, here's a fixed statement that I made to her that I shouldn't have made as a parent when she was younger. Because my mom was an art teacher. She went to Kutztown and she taught art. She's a beautiful art teacher. And my daughter was, I could see, talented, and so she came to me with a picture she did, and I said, that is so beautiful, you're going to be an artist. That's a fixed statement, because she then goes up to my husband and shows the same picture, and my husband looks at it and goes, what's that? What do you think she does? I'm not going to be an artist. My mom is just like projecting onto me, and so I'm going to go find something else to do. Whereas what I should have said, could have said, wished I had said, is, wow, honey, this is very interesting. It's very busy in this area. Tell me about it. It looks like you spent a lot of time on it. That is a curiosity-orienting kind of comment. So I really highly recommend, Carol Dweck is a psychologist at Stanford University, and her book Mindset. When we got to Massachusetts after being in Colorado, we went to the middle school with our daughter, and the principal held up this book, and I said, we are where we need to be. I was like, that is a good place for us to be, growth mindset. And my favorite joke, which is this one, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb has to want to change. So I have a question for you. How many of you know the term IQ, right? Your intelligence quotient? You all have your number when you start school, you take the test. I'm going to give you 3 choices of an answer, but can you change your number of your IQ? How many of you say yes? How many of you say no? And how many of you have the Harvard answer? It depends. A lot. And every single one of you, except for the abstainers, are all correct. Because the evidence shows that if you believe that's your number, it actually is. The evidence shows that if you believe you can grow your IQ through strategy, you actually can. And so it depends is also correct, because it depends on whether you think you can or you can. So it's, all of you are correct, except the abstainers. You have to commit. So warm up to the next exercise. This is the takeaway from the Carol Dweck book, and it's really not just about us. As I gave you an example of my daughter, it's also about what we say to others. So how do we fulfill our own potential, but it's also how do we bring that about in others. And so it's very important for both. So you don't have to read the book. That's actually the summary, but I highly recommend the book. And she also has a TED Talk. I also like, because my hair gets this way in State College, you know, Einstein didn't think he was brilliant either. And neither did Edison. They just say they stayed with problems longer. And I think that's something for us to think about. So I'm going to just fast forward here, because I want to get to, this is all just some scholarly underpinnings, but I want to get to those of you that think that this work is kind of soft. It's the soft science. It is the hardest science. And it, as Brene Brown said, underpins everything else. And so I've already tried to present to you the evidence, but I hope you feel it in your heart that this is really important work to do, and that leadership is character. It's not just your style. Like, what is your style of leadership? Anybody that comes out into an interview with me and we ask that question and they give one style, the interview is pretty much over. After I explore a little bit, it's like if you only have one style, you have a hammer, everything is going to look like a nail, right? It's what's in your repertoire and how are you growing that, so that the who you are, the life journey you've been on, adapting to the different situations that you're going through from a day-to-day or from one career into another career area, industry. It's how do you adapt without losing yourself. And that is what is so important. So maybe you're growing your strategy. By default might be very directive, which means I'm a great leader during crisis, but I've worked on the collaborative and the democratic part because I know that's important for buy-in, or affiliation, because nonprofits, you have to build the relationships, or expert, because you have to be an expert if you're in a technical real field, or coach, because coaches are important to develop talent, and you have to have it all in your repertoire and figure out how to make those tools work for you across different situations you're finding yourselves in. So I think that it's not just a matter of style. It is the forces that have shaped us is your life story. And that the process of becoming a more effective leader is much the same process as becoming an integrated human being. That's the authentic originality piece of it. So our exercise is going to try to get us inside the onion a little bit to who are you? And if your heart rate's going up a little bit right now, that's perfect. If you're getting a little teary because you're starting to think about all the stuff that's on the onion, right? Inside is that part of you that you knew when you were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. You went flying out of your house with your Superman cape or Superwoman cape, until the world said, you know, you don't get selected for something, you get bullied for something, you get told you have to be something, and pretty soon all people see is the exterior of who shows up in terms of what we wear, what we say. And I'm going to ask you to get inside the onion a little bit and to get through that life story, some of the vulnerabilities, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. And by the way, strengths are more important to focus on than weaknesses. If we focus on weaknesses and try to move the needle, we take our eye off the strengths. We can't move the needle in our weakness area very well. We need to know what they are to hire people or to be surrounded by people that's their strength. But if we try to move the needle in your area of strength, in other words, your authenticity, your originality, we can really move that needle, and that can make you a much more effective leader. So to get inside the onion, this is not the question you're going to share with each other. It's a warm-up to get you to think about how you're going to share. I'm going to ask you to think about if somebody asks you a question similar to an interview question I had recently when I was selected to be the co-director for the Center for Public Leadership. The interviewer asked me, Dana, what makes you angry? And I had never been asked that question in an interview. I didn't have a prepared answer to that. And so it was really a raw, like what bubbled up to the top and how I answered that. And I want to know, for you, what are you thinking about? Now, some people have big ranges of emotion and get very angry. And some of us have a very narrow range. My husband doesn't know if I'm being, offended or if I'm being amorous. Because I don't have a big range. I have to say it. And so it's not necessarily good or bad, but we need to know what that is. But we all get set off by something. We all have buttons that people push. And so what is it that kind of is your button? What is that thing that kind of gets you a little bit angst? It's a button for you. It's something that sets you off. And think about where it comes from. Maybe in your life story, as you look back, where does that come from? And as you think about the next question, which was the question that I was asked right after this question, and by the way, my answer to it, I don't know where it came from, but now I do, looking back on it. I said, you know what angers me? It's all I could see was a baby gate and a set of stairs. And I said, what angers me is when there's a gate in front of the stairs and the baby isn't able to, with a little bit of support and help, go up the stairs, and pretty soon they'll be going up and down the stairs, sharing with the next sibling how to go up and down the stairs. I don't know why, and it even makes me worse angry, sets me off, if the baby's pushed away and can't even look up the stairs. That's not for you. You can't go there. And that really, how I came up with that, I was after, and then when she said, what are you passionate about? That's the next part. If you go through that middle of your authentic self, what are you passionate about? What is it, if people don't pay you, what makes you not get in bed and want to pull the covers out, but what makes you leap out of bed and go to bed good tired? What is it that you like to do, you love to do, you can't help yourself, you have to apologize for it because it's just who you are? And it might be you love to be the naysayer in the room. We need naysayers in the room so we don't have groupthink. It might be you're the one that creates the unity in the room. It might be the person that simplifies or complicates, or what is it, how is it, is your passion? What kind of makes you tick? You love it. When you do it, you kind of go, I'm just being me. That's why sometimes we have to apologize. What is that for you? And where does that come from? And the way I answered this was, I love to help people, like I used to fly gliders, and so I love to get people to get into thermals to figure out how to get to a higher place. Where is their juice that gets them to that next level of excellence? And that's how I answered that question. And over half of my career, I've been in education, training, personnel policy, so it's clearly you follow your passion, or it follows you, but somehow it fuels you to do that. Now think back where that comes from, because for me, my passion, where it comes from is the mirror image of what angers me and where that comes from. And I don't know if that's true for you as well. All right, so the setup for this next exercise, again, it's going to be short, but we're going to have you think about your story, because your story actually, as you think about, you may not even be thinking about it, but it's in there, and it's impacting your relationships, it impacts your actions, and it impacts your leadership. And so having a way to think about this and your authenticity is critically important. So, and our stories get out there lots of ways. Like we tell on social media, others tell on social media. We tell through gossip, others do. Others tell through letters of reference or recommendation. And then there's the story in our own head. So recognize there's those categories. These first couple, what you put on your LinkedIn, what you put on your social media are usually pretty self-affirming. They're usually like on a bad day, you go, okay, I've done some things. The one that's in our head, even though maybe you stand in front of the mirror once in a while and go, isn't this world so lucky to have me? Those are usually not the ones that are in our head most of the time, so they're a little bit more self-doubting. So the competing narratives exercise gets you at, okay, which one's you then? Because authenticity is integrated. Integrity, the engineers will tell you, is strong because you've got the integrity of a beam. So how do you bring it all together? And which one's real? What's original? So here's your questions. And it's only going to be 6 minutes, so you'll have 3 minutes each. And I'm going to ask you to pretty much be disciplined as a table to stick with one person. And I'm going to ask you to think about what is part of your self-affirming narrative. So something that you're proud of that is part of the who are you. And it's affirming. When your voice is speaking to you, it makes you proud. And some people don't like to share this. I spent a lot of time over in Australia. They have something called the tall poppy syndrome, and if you're up too high, right, it's chop, chop, chop to get everybody the same. And I showed up there as a young officer, and they said, "Oh, welcome to Australia." And they said, "Where did you go to school?" And I stood really proud and at attention and said, "The United States Air Force Academy." And they said, "Couldn't you get a real education?" I said, "Where am I?" I love their sense of humor. It's very humbling. But, something you're affirming. And it's hard because then you feel like you're bragging. But, I mean, I am proud I was of the first women to go to a service academy and ended up becoming the first female general officer out of all the military service academies in the United States. And that I'm proud that I was sponsored to come here by the Air Force to get a PhD at Penn State. I'm proud that my 2 daughters have chosen to serve, and I have a great partner that's been helping me to raise them when I've been deploying around the world. And I'm proud to have been at Harvard and to be able to continue in that mission even in retirement and helping advance public leaders around the world. So that's a bit of the affirming, but I'm hoping you're thinking about at least one thing that you're willing to share that you're proud of that's affirming. The second part of this is a bit harder. Did you hear me just take a deep breath? This is hard because my heart rate, when I get to do this second part, I'm resting heart rate about 55. Just take a guess at what my heart rate gets up to when I share this second part of something that's a little bit more self-doubting. Keep going. When I'm 88, are you kidding? You could feel my anxiety, can't you? You said 101? Higher? 120 higher? 140, anybody know CPR? Good, thank you. I'm looking right at you then. It's about 133 is what it goes up to now, and if I looked and checked, I'd tell you exactly, but it's up there. And what's happening is that amygdala hijack, that is our reptilian brain. It's not a frontal cortex thinking brain. It's our way that we respond to danger, and we can't override it. Darwin himself, with a boa constrictor in a plastic box, tried to override it and show that he wouldn't fall back habitually to that boa constrictor and couldn't. We can do things to go into our frontal cortex faster, which is think about our role, like an early responder or a parent or something, but it's natural. We can't override it. It happens. And cur is heart. That's the root word. So heart rate goes up when we're in some kind of danger or fearful, whether it's psychological, physical, or moral. And so that's what's happening right now. It's a little bit of psychological courage that I'm going to need to tell you the second part. And I want you to think about what you're going to share, even if your heart rate goes up a little bit, but something that's so much a part of your life story. Not many people know it. It's not in your bio. But if people knew it about you, they would know you so much better. And, this is the most important, you're willing to share it. It could be just a nickname that you have and maybe what that means to you. So be thinking about what you're going to share. What I would like to share with you is something that's very difficult to share, but I'm willing to because I know the value of it. Once again, I'm taking a deep breath. That's all, trying to keep my heart going, but I know who knows CPR. I failed my very first test in life. I was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in St. Joseph's Hospital, and I came when the shift change was happening and the doctor wasn't quite there yet, and so I was without oxygen for just a little bit long. It was a problematic birth. I made it, but as a result of that, I had a very severe disability, learning disability, for the first 5, 6, 7 years of my life. My mother was going to grad school in Buffalo, and she identified what was going on. My sister was, advanced. My brother is actually advanced, and here's Dana, who can't do a somersault. I had no reflexes. I wasn't able to read. The one thing I was able to do was I had like an auditory memory that was like a picture memory. And so she got me involved in, my mom, theater and just auditorily worked with me until she could get me help. And she sent me to the college that was near where my dad worked, and I had 2 tutors for an entire summer to kind of wire both sides of my brain with my body, and I was able to mainstream I was going to be going into a a class for the learning disabled or the special needs, and she helped me mainstream, and the rest is history. I mean, 2 masters, a PhD, dean at the Air Force Academy for 9 years, and then now teaching at Harvard. And I'm glad none of you are walking out, so my heart rate is starting to go down a little bit. Thank you, you're kind. But that's a hard part to share. But it's also maybe a little bit of my story that maybe makes sense to you in terms of some of what else I've shared with you. And it's also probably why I'm a workaholic and why I didn't see work-life family in your picture, because I've always felt like I had to work harder and I feared failure, and you can see the whole picture. So with that, I'm going to give you 6 minutes. It's like speed dating. And the way that we're going to do this is, because I don't want you to feel uncomfortable, but let's just say Brian and Lisa, you together. And so Brian's would say, I'll go ahead and start. And so you would give both. You would say, here's my affirming example, and here's my harder to share, but I'm willing to. And then you'll have 3 minutes, and then you'll have 3 minutes as well. Thing that's you're proud of, and don't spend too much time on the thing you're proud of so you don't have to share the other thing, right? So equal time. And then the thing that's a little bit harder, but you're willing to. Does that make sense? I'll leave the instructions up here, but so 3 minutes each with one other person, and share your answer to these 2 questions, and then I'll do a very quick debrief on this. All right, go ahead, enjoy. Aren't you glad we have more time tonight and tomorrow? All right, if I could have your attention back. So I'm going to ask you, first of all, please thank the person you shared with, because I know that took a lot of courage, and yeah. So I'm going to ask you each a question, a reflective question. I'm not going to get at anything that you all shared with each other. That was confidential, and we call it Chatham House rules. So outside of this, it stays between you, and you can talk about the essence of the conversation, but not names and attribution. So the question I'm going to ask you is, what one word describes how you're feeling now as a result of having done this competing narratives, both hearing mine, but also yours that you shared and also heard a word. And sometimes, the word is vulnerable or exposed, or maybe even, I will say, I feel I'm cherishing the moment in the venue and cherishing the experience that I saw you all just leap into. So my word is kind of cherish. Sometimes I say vulnerable because I feel like I've overshared, but for some reason I feel a little bit more cherishing with you and with this group, especially cherishing that I have a medical provider here. Sometimes it's like, I'm a veterinarian, and I go, I don't know if that's going to help. All right, so what's your word? Just shout it out. I'll repeat it. Go ahead. Assured. Similar experiences, so you have an assuring feeling. Excellent. Camaraderie. Open. Deep connection, 2 words, but it's got a hyphen. Yes. Enlightened. Cathartic. Confident. Strength? Appreciative. Authentic. I love it. Star student, A+++. Other words. Go ahead. Stereo. Excited. Inclusive. In the middle. I'm with them. That's hyphenated too. Aren't these words beautiful? And what's the issue here? Go ahead. I'll get another one. Frustrated. Share a little bit. What's the frustration without sharing details?
We started talking about, oh, sorry.
Thank you.
We were actually talking about self-doubting, and then we know each other, so we corrected each other on why we shouldn't feel that way, but then we got to the bottom of it, and I'm frustrated of why I feel self-doubting about things that pertain to work, But I got frustrated because I shouldn't be, because I should fix that, and now I'm frustrated. And I said, what do you feel? And he said, frustrated.
So you can, in your frustration, that can be a launch point, right? The best times that we grow are when we're frustrated with something, that we say, I got to do something, and it kind of pushes us into action, because change actually is fear of the unknown. But yet, if we work through that, we can actually get to where we want to go. And, excellent. That's excellent. Sometimes people say relieved, and I'm like, relieved that it's over, or is it really? And it's like, no, just relieved that I actually got something off my chest, so to speak, and now I have to go home and tell my partner because I just told somebody I just met something that I haven't told my partner. But it's interesting. So what we do as leaders, right, on the hero's journey, is we try to be perfect. We try to just be the first part of that affirming narrative and not vulnerable enough. And what happens is, the further up you go, first of all, people can't relate to you. And the other part of that is people know humans are imperfect. And so what we do is we start looking for chinks in the armor. And we look for the frailties and the thing, and we go for it like the jugular. But when you hear the full story, and actually Jim and I were just talking about that as we shared, and it's almost like the two stories fit together more. It's like, I see you now. I was trying to figure that part out, but now I get it. I see you, and it's fascinating. Now, it's also hard, and that's an acknowledgement. When I became the first general officer out of the U.S. Service Academies, they called my mother, who is the one that really sent me on a different trajectory. She's still living. She lives in Florida, and she gave a quote. And her quote was, "We're so proud of Dana. She's come such a long way since her learning disability." I'm an expert marksman. I don't like to say this, but Mom, how could you? That was my initial reaction was, Mom, you just took my backpack, you threw it out on the world stage, because it went into the paper, that went into the Early Bird in the Pentagon, that went in the Stars and Stripe, it went around the world, and that was the quote. And my backpack was open for the whole world to see. But it was, what Jim and I were just talking about, it was like almost instantaneously freeing. I felt light, I felt seen, and all of a sudden I started feeling like, wow, that's always been there. Why haven't I shared that? That is so part of me. That's probably why I ended up spending almost all my life in human development, education, training, why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so it can be an epiphany, but also it can give us that essence of who we are to be able to be more effective at what we do. And it's not just who we are, it is also the why we are. Right? That's our purpose that helps us stay on our compass, that stays on us. And so think about that, because vulnerability, and this doesn't mean being totally open and transparent, right? Picking and choosing when you say or share at what time, but when you feel that, let me ask you a question with your private votes like this or like this. Let's talk about trust. Your trust in me, your trust in the person you just shared with, did it go down? Oh, you got a double thumbs down. What did you do? Oh, you gave him a double thumbs up, so you guys got something to work out here. So did it go down? Did it go sideways, or did it go up? Yeah, a lot of times people will say, I felt more connected. Even in the frustration, I feel like I get you more. Maybe we share something. And so why is it that we do this? And so that's something to think through. The last part of what I wanted to talk about, I actually was going to show you a quick video, but I'm not going to show that. But it's of Mo Cheeks. I don't know if you know Mo Cheeks. Okay. Anyway, it's a coach who was a basketball player, then became coach. And there's 20,000 people in a stadium in Oregon, and no fire marshal, anybody more could get in. And a 14-year-old was singing the national anthem. And it's a beautiful, go and Google it, Mo Cheeks and national anthem. You'll see this beautiful video. The 14-year-old was in the fight or flight, the paralysis, because she got out there, and in the middle of the song, she forgot her words. And Mo Cheeks, in 4 seconds, was by her side. and he was standing behind her. You can see this in the video, and he was singing, off tune by the way, singing and helping her get through it. And at the end, every single voice in the stadium was singing, and Natalie went off doing high fives with everybody, and he walked off kind of like, whew. And you know that he is out there because it took him 3 seconds to walk to her side, and it took 4 seconds, right, total from when she forgot her words. So how long did it take him to get into his frontal cortex of, I'm going to go help her sing this song? 1 second. That 1 second is called habit. That 1 second is instantaneous. And why did he do that? He didn't think about vulnerability of, I can't hold a tune, because he couldn't. He was a coach. He was empathetic towards the fact that here's somebody that's struggling that he knows can do it with a little bit of support, and got her into that high-performing so where she can go off and sing for another day. Beautiful voice. But it was just a little bit too much challenge, needed a little bit of support. He's a coach. He was willing to do that even though he didn't hold the tune. He actually messed her up a few times, but at the end of it, his mother said, I don't even know if they won the game, but I was so proud of my son. And pretty special. So let me just get to the end. I'm just going to go through a couple of things here because I wanted to talk about how do you become more authentic? How do you grow and develop as a leader of character? There's one way that you grow, and that's in content, right? In what you learn, what you practice, that's all part of you, and you're learning. And that is what's inside what I call this be, know, do model. It's attributed to the Army, but it's what you know how to do, skills. It's what you know, knowledge, and that be part of who you are is the biggest part. So in the knowledge and skills area, and look there, that's motivations, that's passions, that's your values, that's your principles, that's all the things that make you distinctive and makes each of us distinctive. So the content part is really through the education and training model. We all know that, right? Education and training is what you learn in terms of knowledge and what you learn how to do, which could be a skill like a sport or a musical instrument, things like that. But it's based on deficit. You need to get 100% on a test, you get a 90%, what do you have to do? You have to figure out that 10% you missed. So it's all based on deficit. And we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to, well, you do. You have to get 100% on your tests. But we feel that. Some things in leadership and in our development, you just have to be good enough. You don't have to give a great speech. Look at the King's Speech. Have you seen that movie? He stutters. He can't, he's never going to give a 100% speech, but he has to, for the law of the land, deliver a speech with great tutors. He does it. It's not great. He fulfilled what he had to do, just good enough. And even Michael Jordan. We'll talk about Michael Jordan. You heard the commercial? I've missed more game-winning shots than I've made. I fail over and over and over again. That is why I succeed. So this top part is actually the B component, who you are, is very much strength-based, and it's about development. And our development is critical. And so I'm going to share with you the process of how you develop as an authentic leader, but I also want to reinforce with you why we're hearing authentic so much and why the work you're doing and just did, and you can continue to practice, is because knowledge is being doubled, what is it now, every 7 hours? It was 10, then 8, 7, who knows how fast? Knowledge is like, we can't keep up. That's why in a lot of education, we still need to know some knowledge. We know more we need to know critical thinking and how to figure out how to get knowledge. Skills are becoming obsolete almost as quickly as we learn them. Right now, ChatGPT can code, right? There's so many things. Even in swimming, the technology is changing in terms of suits. That's even, I mean, you look at the Olympics. So you ask those athletes, you know, skills are becoming obsolete in many ways. How do we keep up as humans? That top part, that's our half-life is becoming more valuable in who we are. Our ethics in particular and our principles. And so you're going to continue to hear more and invest more in this very important part of your effectiveness in life and for all of us, not just for you. So the process is, are you ready? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you preparing for what you have? Or are you just going from experience to experience to experience? Because that's what we tend to do and think just by osmosis we're going to develop. And that's not the case. Challenge and support in that experience is important. Putting ourselves into the frustration zone in order to grow is important. But taking time at the end of that also to reflect, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to be held accountable? What is going to kind of reinforce for me my authenticity going forward? So there's questions that I put here that are just, the first part of it is, how ready am I? How am I ready? How open am I? How curious? How present? What are the expectations I have? Why am I here? And how are you here? And on the other end of it, you have, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to make sense of it? With whom? What are you going to do differently? How are you going to be differently? How are you going to lead differently? So those are reflective takeaways. I kind of finish where we started off with how important now you see the thread of everything here in terms of who you are. Eventually it gets into the why you are. But ultimately, when you think at the very end, it's you bringing you into, we are Penn State. Yes, you all give yourselves a round of applause. You leaned into this exercise for each other. And I just want to finish with a very, very, very big thank you to each and every one of you for what you have signed up to do for Penn State. This is the love of our existence, right? And that's why you're paying it back forward. That's a bit of why I'm here. I know that's why you're here. And none of us would be here without the great support from Penn State Alumni Association and also from Jim and Kathleen. Thank you.